Hello, this is Reverend Don Lewis coming to you from the beautiful metaverse, and I'm trying to make sure that I'm actually going out. I'm not certain that I am. Um, and I think I am. So if you can hear me, um, say hello. This is Midday with Reverend Don. As you know, if you follow Midday with Reverend Don, you can type your questions or comments into most of the platforms you might be watching on. They'll show up here in my chat room. And I had a brief little technical error when I first came on. Wasn't quite sure if I was broadcasting or not. I guess that I am. Hope you're having a lovely day. Hello to an invisible friend in the chat room. Invisible friend says, ironically enough, I can see you. Thank you, invisible friend. Hello to unique one. And every now and then there are little technical things that make you wonder. But that's only to be expected. Today, my subject is the subject of appearances. And we are putting together through Gaia Thrift a series of Reverend Don curated collections that will be available to people. And these are things like shirts and ties and outfits that I will put together for people in packages, um, based on the idea that I am fairly well known for my rather distinct fashion sense. So today I thought I would talk a little bit about that. We'll be talking more about those packages in the future, but today I thought I would talk a little bit about why I dress the way that I dress and some ideas that you might find helpful from that. And why do I dress the way that I dress? Well, first, I dress for myself and not for anyone else. And I like the way that I dress. Particularly, that pattern was set really, really even in childhood, but I've always felt good being well dressed. When I was a teenager, putting on a suit felt a little bit like putting on armor to go face the world. And although I don't exactly feel that way about it now, I still feel better to know that I'm presenting myself in a certain way. Part of this has to do with people's reactions. And this is a little bit like using interfaith language when dealing with people from other faith backgrounds. If you use language they understand, they're going to understand you better. Whereas if you use terms that are unique to your own background and they don't recognize them, they may either simply not understand what you're saying or may read other things into it that are not what you mean at all, based on their own different understandings. Until you get to know them and can explain things to them, it's better to use words they understand. I dress in a style that's very recognizable to anyone, at least of a certain age, and that carries certain things with it. Um, But first and most importantly, I do it for myself. I also do it to a certain extent for my mother and other family members. Their tapes play in the back of my mind. They were always very concerned with appearance. Um, I've pointed out to people I come from a background of mixed ethnicity, and appearances were very important to most of my family when I was growing up. Um, my mother, my grandmother, even my father were very concerned um, with how people reacted to them, although in different ways. Um, my father, who was um, Nordic white, basically, in late life made it a point to dress, to avoid high status clothes altogether, because he felt that people treated him in a way that revealed their truer selves when he was not dressed in an impressive way. Um, but coming from his background, he had that privilege. My mother was always very concerned with appearance. And I tend to be as well, both as a person, but also as an artist. And I regard clothing as being an artistic expression. So if you wonder why I dress the way that I do, these are some of the reasons. Some of them are social, some of them are familial, some of them are personal, and a lot of them are creative. When I put together an outfit, I have the same feeling as when I put together an artwork. And I find it particularly enjoyable when I find something goes together that I didn't think would. Um, and hello to Celeste Parrish in the chat room, who says, "Why are you rocking back and forth?" And it's because I am in a chair that does that, and it's an unconscious habit. So I will try not to rock because I imagine that's distracting. Um, Thank you for pointing that out, because I don't think I realized I was doing it. Um, and that is actually a very important point, and it goes directly into what we are discussing today: appearances. A lot of things we do that influence our appearance and how people perceive us are not conscious. Um, and Celeste says, "Oh, okay, yes, yeah, it's just that simple. I was recently gifted a new office chair that rocks, and it's something I'm kind of in the habit of doing when I'm not broadcasting, and I sometimes forget that yes, I need to kind of stay still, or people may feel a little seasick, and this kind of speaks to the fact that we need to consider things that may not be obvious, and sometimes I catch myself doing that, but I need to be more conscious of it. But I'm also not going to get rid of this chair because it's a very comfy chair. Hello to Reverend Mary in the chat room. It's good to see you. Um, but some of the things that I consider when I put together outfits that may be of relevance to anyone. I've talked before about color and why color is important. Um, as a child, my mother taught me to always match my colors or contrast them, but to always consider them. My mother herself was very concerned with the color of whatever she happened to be wearing, and with making sure that she put colors together in certain ways. The result of which is that she was always well dressed, um, regardless of what she was wearing. And no matter how you dress, the colors that you wear have effects, and they have metaphysical as well as physical effects. And they also have social effects. It's very well known at this point, I think, that there's a system that's used in the beauty industry to assign people to certain seasons according to their coloring and the idea of what colors are going to look best on them. But if you look at that, you'll see people who are described as being spring or summer or fall or winter. But you'll see that different colors do look different on different people based on their own natural coloring. Um, and hello to Arlene in the chat room. It's good to see you, Arlene. And this is something to consider when you're putting things together. That something that looks good on someone else may not look equally good on you. That certain colors are going to flatter you more than others. Some years ago, it was recommended that I wear a lot more browns and tans at that time, because the blacks and grays that I tend to love really highlighted the gray in my hair, which was advancing exponentially. No longer really relevant, but it wasn't really noticeable in a brown suit or something in that family, and was very noticeable in a gray suit. Um, it had not really occurred to me that that was the case, but in observing it, I saw that it was. And so for quite a while, you would have seen me in a lot more uh, brown and bronze and tan colors for that reason. Um, I know that certain colors are more flattering to me than others. now, and you'll sometimes see me wear them. And of course, I also wear other colors too. And they're not necessarily always the colors that if you ask me, well, is that your favorite color? Well, no, it isn't necessarily, but it might be for a shirt. I have a particular electric teal colored shirt that I always get compliments on, and that does very good things for me. I would never paint my room that color, but it's a lovely shirt, and I quite enjoy wearing it. Unique One says, I usually wear earth tones, and for some people, that is very flattering. And um, how these different tones interact with your skin tone um, will have a great effect on how they look on you. And um, how you want to use them to present yourself. My mother, for example, was very careful to avoid colors that made her look, as she put it, sallow. That is to say, colors that brought out the brown in her skin. One of these was black. That's not to say she didn't own anything black, and not to say she never wore black. But usually, if she was going to wear black, she made sure she had a white collar or something else between the black and her skin, so as not to be unflattering, which she considered it was. Now, in mourning, that was an exception because my mother came from the generation that still wore mourning. I still am inclined to wear mourning when appropriate, but most people today do not. Hello to Reverend Ed in the chat room. It's good to see you. But these were some of her considerations. When we talk about color, also, we want to remember that colors have metaphysical purposes as well. And I have used this very extensively in my life, and I recommend it to people because I found when certain things were happening in my life, choosing the colors that I was wearing appropriately made a positive difference. For example, at points in my life where I felt emotionally overwhelmed, I tended to gravitate very strongly toward grays, um, various different shades of gray. And certainly not as the only thing that I ever wore, although I can remember being suggested once that I only ever wore the color gray. But at that point in time, it was very helpful to me because gray is a very insulating color, a very grounding color, and a color that helps to avoid extremes. Um, Other colors all have their own purposes. Purple, for example, is a very spiritual color, very good for spiritual alignment. Black is a very protective color. If you feel the need for grounding or for protection, black can be a very good color to wear. And um, white is very good for openness. If you're trying to open spiritually or emotionally, white can be a very good color. Also, other similar pastels can have that effect. Um, Blue is very good for communication. Red is good for energy. If you want to use color to bring more energy in to your life, red is a very good color for that. And Arlene says, what about people who dye their hair? And hello to Jade Rising in the chat room. It's good to see you. And yes, this is very much the same thing. When you dye your hair, you're bringing the energies of that color strongly about you. And I think that people who dye their hair red probably have experienced this very strongly. And hello to Steve Taylor in the chat room, who says this is another very good and interesting program. Thank you, Steve. I've known a lot of people in the pagan community who've chosen to dye their hair red, but I would think that this would give you extra energy in general. And I know that in clairvoyance, for me, when I see a spirit with red hair, it doesn't necessarily mean that that spirit had red hair when they were living. It means they have a great deal of energy around them. And I think that that's a very good example. If you dye your hair purple, I would think it would help to keep you on a more spiritual tone than you might be otherwise. Um, People who dye their hair blonde, I think, find themselves feeling a little bit more open in some ways, depending on the shade of blonde. Um, Yellow is also a color of success and also of enthusiasm and social interaction. And using colors this way, including in things like hair dye and makeup, I think is very much a metaphysical and an artistic process far beyond what people give it credit for. A lot of people think of it as being um, just about their physical appearance, but I think it has a spiritual effect also. And I often remark, and Reverend Mary says the blue-haired lady chuckles, and Reverend Mary notably has vibrant blue hair, and I would think that would be very good for communication. And what does Reverend Mary do? Communication, communication, communication. It is the perfect color. Um, I have a friend from many years ago, Robin Lochurko, who was a prominent Chicago psychic. Uh, have not heard from her for many years now, but used to know her very well. And she was known for keeping her hair very short and dyeing it many, many different colors on a regular basis. It was not uncommon for her to start a 3-day psychic fair with, let's say, blonde hair, show up the second day with red hair, the third day it might be brown. She dyed her hair very frequently whenever she felt the need for a different energy. And she kept it short so that she could grow these colors out quickly and change them how she wanted them. And once a year, around the time of her birthday, she always dyed her hair black for several weeks because she needed extra grounding at that time. And she insisted this was a very productive metaphysical practice for her, and I totally believe that because I do the same thing with clothes. Back in the day when I did psychic fairs all the time, I had specific outfits that I would wear to read in, and they changed over the years, and eventually I used several. But for example, when I started, I wore all black all the time, or mostly black, because I felt that I needed that grounding um, as part of what I was doing. Later, I started wearing sky blue as my primary reading color for purpose of communication and being a lighter color for opening. Eventually, I started wearing red. I had a red suit. It was technically called Bayberry, and I wore it for additional energy because I was doing so many readings and such long periods. I needed additional energy, and I found the color brought it to me. And these are some of the things that I have done. Unique One says, sometimes I have needed to blend in, and grays and blacks add to that need, I believe, and I totally agree. If you find yourself in a place where you need to be invisible, one of the things you can do is to create a psychic barrier around yourself. And when I do that, I usually place a field of black all around me. And I find that people usually will not be aware that I am present. But you can do this with clothing as well as with energy. And yes, grays and blacks can definitely help you to be um, less obvious. They can help you um, to avoid unpleasant situations on occasion. And you need to, when choosing your colors, bear in mind also what they mean to you, because you may have a particular emotional reaction to a color that might be different from mine. And I'm rocking again, so let me stop that so nobody gets seasick. But um, I find that I find gray a very reassuring color, but there are people out there who I imagine would find it a depressing color because they have different emotional associations with it. And if that's the case, then it might not be the color for you. Um, I really don't have negative associations with any color, but I know that's not a universal thing. So if, for example, you really don't like the color yellow, well, then you wouldn't want to wear that color. But other people would find it helpful, as I say, for social issues, for social communication, for issues of success, and it can be very beneficial in that way. Um, some people may not like the color white because of associations that may have been given in their cultural background. Um, if they come from certain sorts of churches, for example, they may want to avoid the color white because they have negative connections to it. And that is the appropriate thing if you feel that way about the color. Um, I find that white and colors like it are very good for psychic and emotional opening. And hello to High Priest 012. It's good to see you. Um, and that using that color can be very beneficial when I want that energy. And as I think about these curated collections, these are some of the things that I would talk to people about in terms of what they want to promote in their life. What they're looking for, not only in appearance but in energy, because this is also important. When I put together an outfit like the one I'm wearing today, I'm thinking about its appearance, but I'm also thinking about its energy. And what I'm wearing today is definitely a very, very, very stable kind of energy without a lot of ups and downs. Not that I necessarily have a need for that at the moment, but that's its energy. And I know putting it together that it's good for that type of situation. We're currently definitely experiencing winter in the Midwest, and so stability is good. So it seemed like a good outfit for today. I'm very happy to have recently acquired a new light blue suit, which every now and then you'll see me wear. And I was really surprised to find it. It was thrifted. Most of my clothing is. And perhaps we'll take a moment to talk about that. But that light blue color for me is a very good color in terms of communication, in terms of spiritual opening, in terms of psychic work. And also, I just like it. It's not a color that you see a lot of people wear who look like me, but most of the things I wear, you don't see a lot of people wear anyway. So um, I will admit some of my outfits are very colorful. And every now and then, my dress inspiration will be the Joker, and I will just pick the things that most contrast and see if I can still make them balance. And to me, that is a bit of an art. But one thing that I absolutely do not like is always looking the same. And so you will see that I try to have a variety in how I look. Now, I said I was going to talk a little bit about thrifting. And, I did not grow up dealing with thrift stores. I think that's partly because I don't know that we had any here when I was young. And I don't think they were like they are now in that day, but I don't know. But it was when I came to Chicago that I learned about thrifting, and it was Ed the Pagan who taught me about thrifting. And the very first time I went to a thrift store, Village Discount Outlet in Chicago, and if you're in Chicago, maybe you know them. They have numerous places, and I highly recommend them. What I found is you could get wonderful clothing in good shape for very low prices, um, and in a range of sizes. Now, this was 1990, and I was a heavier man then than I am now. And finding clothes in my size was not easy for me. I mostly had been confined to shopping from certain companies. But I found in the thrift store I could find clothes that fit me um, at very good prices I had never seen previously. And it helped me to enlarge and expand my wardrobe in ways that had not been possible. So I highly recommend thrifting to people, and I found over time that I could find wonderful things at Village Discount. I used to have a lovely olive green suit that I used to wear. Um, and I eventually donated it to a different thrift store when it no longer fit me because I was too thin to wear it anymore. But for many years, I loved that suit because it was um, not something I would normally have been able to get for myself, um, either at the price or at that size. Because one of the things you find as a larger person is that fashionable clothes are mostly aimed at thinner people. And one of the great things of my present life is that I've come to the point I can actually find more fashionable things in my size and not have to go to specialty shops as I once did. But still, I find it even better to continue thrifting because I can find so many wonderful things there at really good prices. So I highly recommend thrifting, not just because I'm involved with Gaia Thrift, but because I think it's um, a very good thing to do. And with that, I want to take a moment and have a word from our sponsors. Why? Because we love our sponsors. And here we go. Ready to unlock the secrets of the universe? Join me, Reverend Don Lewis, for my metaphysical and magic auctions at Gaia Thrift at whatnot.com. Discover fascinating artifacts, mystical crystals, and rare and unusual books that could change your life. Don't miss this chance to bring a little magic into your world. Reverend Don's Metaphysical and Magic Auctions, where the extraordinary can become yours. And thank you to our sponsors, Equinox Learning Hub and Reverend Don's Metaphysical and Magic Auctions. Gaia Thrift has been closed this last couple of weeks, but is reopening tomorrow, so we will probably be having a new auction soon. But meanwhile, on our various websites, you can find a lot of things available to buy online, including some fascinating books, statuary, and other items that can be shipped to you. And I hope that you've enjoyed today's program. And tomorrow I will have my guest Chris Copeland joining us from the Netherlands to talk about what's new at Corellian Publishing. I hope you'll join me for that. And I hope that the rest of your day is wonderful. And with that, let us close with our prayer, as we always do. Divine Mother Goddess, Divine Father God, beloved ancestors, we thank you for all that you do for us in our lives, and we rejoice in this walk we walk together, and we ask you to help us to express ourselves in the best ways possible in life, and to enjoy the ways in which we express ourselves in all the very many different ways that happens. Help us to show our true selves in the best light to the world that we share with others. Beloved Mother Goddess, beloved Father God, beloved ancestors, we thank you with great love, and knowing you are always with us, we thank you for your presence, and may you be blessed now and always. And I thank you for your presence, and may you be blessed now and always, and I'll see you again tomorrow.